Hello and welcome to the Ended Up in Vegas podcast. I'm Nikki.
I'm Megan.
Today we are talking with our co-owner of Simply Vegas, Gavin Ernstone. Welcome to the podcast.
Ladies, how are you?
Very well. How are you?
Fantastic. Delighted to be here. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course. Tell us how you ended up in Vegas.
I flew.
I wonder from where.
No, so obviously I've been here a long time. Since before both of you were born is my guess. I moved here in 94.
Okay.
And there is a picture of the front of Time magazine sitting in my office, framed. So in probably about August of 94, I was sitting in Miami airport waiting for my green card wife, because you got to have a green card wife if you want to move here legitimately and legally. So I was waiting for my green card wife to land at Miami airport, and I picked up a copy of Time magazine. And the front cover, which again is at my office, said Las Vegas, USA, and it's talking about how Las Vegas was the place to be. Now, I was working in casinos, so I started in real estate in 1987, long before you were born.
And where was that at?
That was in London.
Okay.
Real estate, people are worried about the interest rates right now. Interest rates went to 18.5% in London.
Wow.
Not easy to sell houses.
Yeah.
I needed something else to do, and I wanted to travel. So I actually started working in casinos in London. And then I moved from there. I did a year in London in casinos and moved to cruise ships. So I worked on cruise ships, bobbing around the Caribbean and a few other places for about 5 years.
What did you do on the cruise
I was
ship?
a dealer in casinos. So easiest job to get. It's a great environment. If you're looking for a job that has zero responsibilities when you're 21 years old, cruise ship's the best.
Yeah.
Because you got no car, you got no insurance.
Right.
We figured out the only thing you have to pay for is toothpaste. They give you toilet paper, they give you towels, they clean your clothes, they give you a job, they give you money to spend on booze all the time. So they know they'll just get it back, because that's all we did was drink. And yeah, 5 years of that was great, but I felt I needed to move to somewhere and actually, come back to real life. So I was reading this magazine, and it was talking about how the real estate market in Vegas is going to happen, and there was so much development. We had a population of about 750,000 people then, so just crazy, right, from where it is right now. So, I decided, along with my green card wife, that there were two places in America that I could get a job working in casinos. It was Atlantic City, which I've still never been to.
Okay.
Everybody says to me, Atlantic City, avoid it, terrible place. And if you live in Atlantic City, it is what it is.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, not my problem. So obviously I wanted to come to Vegas. Now, my green card wife did not want to come to Vegas.
Okay.
But as luck would have it, she got offered the job as the lead singer in Les Folies Bergères at the Tropicana Hotel.
I love it.
It's gone now, but yeah, that used to be there. So we moved to Vegas. I got my real estate license straight away, but I actually worked at the Tropicana for 10 months. And then a very close friend of mine whose name is actually Guido. And Guido said to me, "Hey, do you want a job at Caesars?" I won't do his accent, because it doesn't sound like mine at all.
Okay.
It was a very heavy New Jersey accent.
I really need you to do it, though, actually.
He was like, hey Gav, you want to work at Caesar's Palace? I'm like, Guide, of course I do, everybody does. And so Guide said, if you get the job, you have to take the job. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, if you get the job, you got to take the job. I'm like, okay. And then the next day, Caesar's Palace calls me and they said, we've got a job for you as a dealer. And I said, but I didn't apply for a job as a dealer. And they said, so do you want the job? And I went, yeah, sure, it's great. So that's how I got a job at Caesars, which is how this town used to run. It's all corporate now, but very, very different back then. Immediately, I had my real estate license, and all my marketing, everything I did, all my clients were Caesars Palace dealers for the first probably 10 years in the business here. It was an amazing place. I loved everybody I worked with, and just great people. I have a little breakfast club with my old guys from Caesars about once every 2 or 3 weeks. The Bagel Cafe, which has been there probably close to 30 years now, up on Westcliff and Buffalo. And we all meet there, as we have done for about the last 28 years, and have a bagel in the morning about once a month. So there we are. So there you go. That's how I ended up in Vegas.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And you're originally from London?
London, England, born and raised.
Yeah.
London is a very, very insular place. So when you're from London and you're a Londoner and you're raised there, you think that there is nothing outside London, and it is the best place in the world to live, and why would anybody ever move away? And so when I just went back to England actually about 4 weeks ago, and we travelled, and it was all outside London, because I haven't seen outside London, because again, I was born in London, where there's a place called the Watford Gap, and that's as far north as you can go in London, and you get to the Watford Gap, you turn around and go back into London, because that's where we're from. So yeah, born and raised there, great town.
Awesome. So what made you want to pursue getting into real estate?
Well, I didn't really have an option.
Okay.
So when I was 17 years old, my parents had divorced, and I decided to live with my dad, which lasted almost 2 months. And at 17, my dad said, you need to move out. By the way, I found you a job. You're going to work for my friend Chris Haskins. You're going to be selling real estate so you can afford to pay for somewhere to live. So my dad booted me out at 17. I actually went back because I'd forgotten something, and he had changed the locks and gone out. And this was 30 minutes after kicking me out, so I couldn't even get back in.
Wow.
So yeah, 17 years old, was on my own, and he got me a job with Chris Haskins in a place called Hollin & Co., which is a real estate company in London, in Maida Vale in London. If you ever go to a great area of London, Maida Vale's fantastic.
Okay.
I didn't have a car. So I was walking, selling houses, and actually wore holes in my shoes. It sounds like an Oliver Twist sort of, one of those stories. But I literally walked, because I was walking everywhere to show clients.
Both ways uphill, right?
What's that?
Both ways uphill.
Sure, absolutely. One of those deals with a loaf of bread under my arm. So, anyway, so I started, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it from the second I started in it. And if the interest rates hadn't gone up, I'd probably still be there, because I had such a great time, and just was such a great area of London. So there we are.
So now you're the dream home specialist.
Sure.
You have come a long way from walking the streets of London.
Sure.
So tell us how.
Walking those smoky, foggy streets of London back in the 1800s.
I feel like there's a drama coming from this podcast. We're going to write a script.
Sure, absolutely.
So tell us about the luxury market. How is that so different?
In every possible way. Obviously, let's start with the basics. Properties are different. You know, there's some incredible houses in town. And when I first started selling luxury homes, which was a while ago, there was a lot of glorified tract homes that were really big. And everything looked like the same Christopher Home model. And everybody did the same roof tile and the same floor tile. It was the marble. Everything looked the same. And all of a sudden, people really started embracing luxury here. And I think, and I genuinely believe, that some of the best houses in the world are now in Vegas. I actually had the privilege of touring a very close friend of mine's home in the Summit, and that's a guy called Farhan Naqvi Law. And I was with him 2 days ago. He just finished his house, and wow, what an absolutely amazing house. That might be the nicest home in town. Just absolutely incredible. And, you know, that's how, one of the ways it's different. The houses are so different. Now, you need to learn what you're looking at. You know, I think it's super important to know your materials, know what's in a house, also be able to recognize there's some really badly built houses in this town that are just really big. You know, there are some people developing that just say, okay, the key is square footage, and not all square footage is created equal. So it's just like identifying those things. And then the other side is the people that I've met in the luxury side have just, you know, all become really, really close friends. I've got to meet some of the most amazing people in town, from professional athletes, from musicians, and then lots of amazing business people. My closest friend I met from real estate, he wasn't in it. I was driving through the ridges where I was selling a lot of land. This is probably about 15, 16 years ago. And there's a guy in a convertible Bentley standing on one of the lots that I have for sale. And so I got out and walked over to him and said, you know, hey, how can I help you? And he said, I'm looking to buy something. And I said, well, what are you looking for? And he said, anything from about 750,000 to about 10 million. I was like, all right, well, we'll see
Painting
what
broad
we can do.
strokes.
And we became very, very close friends immediately. And yeah, he was, moved forward 10 years. He was best man at my wedding. So again, you get to meet great, great people in the luxury market. So.
Yeah. Tell us about your family now. You didn't bring the green card wife to Vegas.
The GCW's long gone. Yeah. No, GCW. So here's the rules. In case you're looking at home for the correct way to get a GCW. So you have to be married for 5 years. So you're going to be on a temporary green card for the first 2 years. They convert it to a permanent green card. Lots and lots of advice. Make sure you have utilities in both of your names. If you're getting a lease, make sure it's in both of your names. Credit cards. These are the things that the INS look at. Just hints and tips for being on this podcast.
Yeah.
So
very
yeah,
helpful.
so GCW hated Vegas. She lived here for 6 months.
Okay.
And I loved it. And she was like, I'm going back to New York. I hate it. So.
Oh.
I feel like these ways of describing an ex are so much more comfortable.
Sure, GCW.
We have clients who are very fond fans of our podcast.
Okay.
And they were here. We were looking for properties for them. We're out to lunch. And one of, I think it was Warren who described his ex-wife as the wrong wife.
Okay.
And his new wife is the right wife.
The right wife.
That's
And I was like,
absolutely-
this is my favorite thing ever.
Yeah.
So now it's like, yes, wrong wife, wrong husband, right husband.
Yes. The green card
GCW
wife.
is what much easier.
Yes,
There's
so
no
much easier.
confusion. In a bizarre story, so one of our agents, who's been with our company from the get-go, we were chatting. This is probably 10 years ago, and she said, "Yeah, I was just on a cruise and I met your ex-wife." I said, "Really?"
Yeah.
So yeah, turns out she was, and they became really good friends. And I said, say hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure she's doing great. I haven't spoken to her, since I got my green card. So yeah, there we are.
Well, the tenets of this podcast is that everyone is like, they say people are 3 degrees of separation, but in Vegas,
Sure.
we kind of think there's one. What do you think?
Look, everybody knows everybody,
Yeah.
which is good and bad because everybody seems to know everybody's business. And as you guys know, I am pretty private about many, many things. One of which we've have been a lot more open about is I'm about to have a kid.
Yeah, tell
Okay.
us about that.
Well, I don't know anything about it yet
You don't
because
know?
he hasn't come out. So
It's a he?
he is a he.
Okay.
So yeah,
So
so
exciting.
my family name, my dad and myself are the only people left in the world with my last name.
Okay.
And I hope my dad's not going to have another kid. I really, really do, 'cause he's 86 and shouldn't be around people.
Yeah.
He's a lunatic.
That's one of the reasons I want to talk to management when I pass is like, how did that happen? How did
Sure.
that get passed? You could do this until you die? What?
Sure. No, absolutely. Anyway, so he's due on the 21st of December.
Oh my gosh.
so soon.
So yeah.
Christmas baby.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Wow. That's exciting.
very exciting. And we went through IVF for 3 years. We really, it's a struggle. And one of the things that I discovered going through IVF and talking to people is so many people have been through IVF. I was with a professional athlete this weekend who's thinking about moving to town. His wife, they just had a baby, obviously much younger. They're in their sort of 20s, early 30s. And they went through IVF. It's so many people.
Yeah.
We were very quiet about it for a long time. I really didn't talk about it at all. We really didn't talk about it at all for about the first 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And then it was just to a very few people. We were very private about it.
Yeah.
My wife is pretty high profile, and she was working ridiculously, 42 weekends a year all over the country. My wife's a reporter for NBC.
Okay.
And so she was traveling all the time and trying to do IVF. And if you've been through IVF, it's progesterone, it's estrogen. You have to do all these injections. She's deathly afraid of needles. And she would be in a hotel room in Alabama at 10 o'clock at night trying to do all these injections. And then because she's a motorsports reporter, she would have a mic pack on and she's running up and down for 12 hours. And it was just rubbing on everywhere that she'd been injected. And so
Grueling.
she just said, hey, we're not going to be able to have a kid if this carries on because it's stressing me out. And there's, so many studies that say stress stops you from getting pregnant. So we really focused on that for about a year. So glad to say the result was good.
Yeah.
Did you do IVF here in town?
Initially, yes.
Okay.
And was very dissatisfied.
Oh, okay. That's what my next question is.
And we actually, again, if you go down to the 6 degrees or 1 degree of separation, we found the best guy in the country, possibly in the world, a guy called Saeed Danishmand, who's in San Diego Fertility Center.
Got it.
And we get down there, and the first thing he said is, "Gavin, do you remember me from when I was looking for houses in Vegas?" I said, "Of course I do," which I did. And he and his wife, they started out in Vegas before they moved there, and had been looking at houses with me. Never bought anything, but I showed them houses 15 or so years ago. So, but wonderful guy. And as I said, he looked at things very differently from the person that we were dealing with, who we, again, were very dissatisfied with. So that's why we switched to out of town.
Yeah.
So I think when this baby comes, it's going to be so much sweeter because you've had to wait for it, and it's such a process to go through. And
absolutely, and he's going to call me granddad because I'll be 54 when he's born. So it's going to be very different because most people obviously have their kids much younger. I think for me the plus side will be that I will be able to spend a little bit more time than I would have done, certainly in my 30s. If I had a kid in my 30s, I was 14 hours a day. Actually, when I was at Caesar's Palace, the 5 years I was at Caesar's, I was selling real estate all day. So I was on 16-hour days for 5 years.
Wow.
And one of the great things about casinos is they feed you. So, I would literally change in the parking lot, rush in, start doing on the table, and then you could go on a break and go and get food, and it was great food in there. So so I'm glad I'm not doing that anymore because I couldn't imagine doing that with a kid.
Well, my dad was 46 when he had me, and I was his only child.
Okay.
So I think that you will have a lot of perspective that a younger dad might not have.
Sure.
And you have all the life's lessons that you've already learned, including the relationship that you've had with your dad and how you want to make it different with your son.
Sure, absolutely. And a good friend of mine, Mike Feeney, had his kid at 54. We went out to dinner last week, and it was an amazing coincidence because his wife was the same age as my wife will be, and it was just, he and I go back in town for a long, long time. His house was the first ever really big house I sold. It was $4 million. I met him from doing marketing, and again became really good friends. He actually, our Simply Vegas office on Durango, he sort of got me because there was the whole story with Remax Associates stealing a load of money from me, and I needed to start a company. And so when I started Simply, I called Mike and I said, "Hey, have you got a spare office in your building?" And he said, "I don't, but Chi-Chi does across the parking lot." And Chi-Chi, who is Bentar Construction, built all of the buildings in there. And I went over to see Chi-Chi, and he said, "You can take my office. I'll move out, and I'll take the office next door." And it was amazing. And that was the building, and he did all that build out. And then when he moved out of the next office, we took that and put Streamline Home Loans and Clear Title in as well. And then Chi-Chi made me buy the building about 2 years ago. So he called me up and said, "Hey, you're going to buy the building." So I'm like, "Oh, okay."
If you say so.
I think I already know the answer to this, but we have a Henderson versus Summerlin situation.
Sure, it is a situation.
So it is
a situation.
So what side should the stratosphere be on in your view?
I thought you were going to say, how come the Henderson office beats the Summerlin office in production every single month?
Oh, that's another
good
question.
Because that is the situation. If John Gafford was here,
Catch up, Gavin.
and I'm glad he's not. If John Gafford was here, he would tell me it's because he's just much better than me at everything.
Probably would.
So he's not. But no. So sorry, what side of the stratosphere? Tell me the question.
When you're looking at the strip, what side of the view should the stratosphere be on?
Should always be on your left.
Yes. And Henderson people say the right?
Listen, and then if I was a Henderson person, and I'm not, I would say, and remind me of what your view of the sphere looks like. And you say, I don't have a view of the sphere.
Oh.
Because you can only see the sphere from Henderson.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly,
That's true.
exactly.
It's one of the I think the foundational things about our podcast and what kind of got us into this is like, when people come here from other parts of town and they're like, okay, should we look at Summerlin or should we look at Green Valley? And I'm like, it's almost like this intangible thing.
Sure.
But there's a preference.
Yeah, and actually, and again, I'm going to hark back to this weekend just gone, people coming into town that wanted to know about town, and I took them everywhere. For them, it was more about the house, though, again, from a professional athlete standpoint, it's where's the training facility. So a lot of the athletes that I've sold houses to with the Raiders want to be in Henderson.
Sure.
With one noticeable difference, there was a very, very famous athlete who moved here and he wanted to be in the Ridges, and I sold him a house in the Ridges, but I think he's the only one that lives over on the west side. Everybody else is in Henderson. All of the hockey guys live on the west side because practice facilities in downtown Summerlin. So, at the end of the day, it's all very similar.
Yeah.
And it's just what you're used to. I've always lived on the west side of town. My first house was out in the northwest, which is now in the middle of town. It's Fort Apache and Cheyenne.
Oh my gosh, I lived
And
up there.
that was as far out as you could go. There was no 215. I used to mountain bike every morning straight out into the mountains. And then I moved to Piccoli Ranch about 10 months after that. So Piccoli's lovely. I love Piccoli, so.
That's usually because I moved here in 2000.
Okay.
And people were like, it must be so different. I was like, Craig was the ends of the earth.
Sure.
There was nothing off of Blue Diamond.
Yeah.
The 215 wasn't fully connected. So I drove from Green Valley and it was like stoplight.
Sure.
Do you remember that when Buffalo and Durango weren't finished?
As I said, the 215 wasn't built when I was living out there. There was nothing. And then there was actually also, if you wanted to test the top speed of your car, there was, when they first started building the 215, there was nothing out there and you could just go out and nail it. And then between Desert Inn and Sahara, Wallapai, was just this one road that didn't go anywhere. And it was great for 0 to 60s. There's nothing on it. We used to do speed tests on it. It was great.
Dragging Sahara.
Sure, absolutely.
So you're kind of known as like the expert on the Ridges, right?
Sure.
What drew you to that neighborhood specifically? What makes it different or unique compared to others like it?
Other than the fact that I live there, you mean?
Okay.
Okay. So back when I was at Caesars, a good friend of mine called me and said, hey, they're opening this place called Red Rock Country Club. And I want to buy a house, take me up there. So we go up there, he buys his house for $440,000 on Golden Chestnut, and it was one of the very, very first houses to sell in Red Rock. And it was developing, and he said, you know what? You should brand yourself as the Red Rock Country Club specialist. It'll be fantastic, you'll make a ton of money. I didn't do anything about it at all.
Okay.
Bob Barnhart did. He started Red Rock Realty. It was huge. He made a fortune. So I was waiting for something to come along to give me that opportunity. It took a long time. It was 10 years later, and the Ridges opened. And I actually went because I was looking to build a house, and I drove into the Ridges because I needed more garage space, because all I ever need in life is more garage space. And so I was looking at lots, and didn't know anything about the Ridges at all. And I drove through and said, wow, this is going to be amazing. There was no houses built. Again, Mike Feeney, the guy I was telling you about who had his kid as 54, his was the first ever resale in the Ridges that I sold for him. So it was just dirt out there. So I went out there and I said, this is the opportunity that I missed in Red Rock. Let me do it. And I ran out. I registered about 200 domain names that all had Ridges in them. I had the trademark, the Ridges Specialist. And so it really came to me rather than me going to it, because I recognized that it would be a great place that a lot of people would come to because it was so different. And it was, McDonald Highlands came just a little bit later, and they were really the two communities, and I'd always lived on the west side, and so that was really how it developed. Now, this year, I sold more stuff in McDonald Highlands than I have in the Ridges, and that's really just been down to inventory. I've had no inventory at all. I've had great inventory in McDonald Highlands, and I've been selling a lot of stuff there all year, so I'll sell wherever there's a house.
Yeah.
In the past almost 3 decades that you've been in real estate here,
Yes.
what has been the most bizarre market?
Well, look, I mean, obviously, 2009, 10, it was absolutely insane. Now, for those people that know me and know my career, I took it as a huge opportunity to do an enormous amount of marketing because everybody just ran for the hills. If you weren't doing REOs or short sales, then you were out of business. And I always say I never did any REOs, but that was a lie. I did 2 in my life, and they called me. US Bank called me. It was one house in Southern Highlands and one house in the Ridges, and said, will you sell this for us? We don't know what to do with it. We're just taking it back. But so obviously it was bizarre. You know, from the general real estate standpoint, you couldn't get hold of anybody on a phone. It was 50 offers on every single house. And so many of those agents that were huge and thought they were the greatest agent on the planet because they had, you know, their REO people sending them all, they disappeared. And they made huge mistakes in pissing everybody off. They pissed off the buyers. They pissed off the sellers. You know, it would be, you got a person. This is a people business. You got a person in a moving van, want to move into the house they just bought, and somebody at Bank of America hasn't signed a form, and the agent just go, I don't care.
Yeah.
Well, you know, they shut so many doors, and the short sales as well. So every single person who you sold a house for that was a short sale, 4 years later, they could buy a house again. So if that had been where I'd been, I'd have kept all of those numbers and I'd have called every single one of them and said, hey, I know you're still renting. I can get you a loan now. And actually, Silver State Credit Union were the first people that were lending to people who had short sales. And that's how I met Laurie Shannon, who's been with us for probably 13 years now. And Laurie got lots of REOs from Silver State, but they were also lending to my clients. So Laurie and I did a load of business together a long time ago because of that. So yeah, there were some missed opportunities, but definitely a bizarre market.
Yeah.
I think someone recently made a statement that we were not really in agreement with, which is it is a traditional market right now that we're in currently. What do you think about that?
What's a traditional market? You know, what does that mean? Because every market everywhere changes. You know, and the key, and one of the things that the risk of sounding egotistical, but hopefully more pragmatically I've always been able to do, is see sort of 6 months ahead of time and plan. The perfect example of that, I think it was called AB 284 was the bill that stopped the robo signing, and therefore there were no more foreclosures. And so everybody freaked out and said, what are we going to do? There's no more foreclosures. And I went, well, I'm going to buy as many houses as I possibly can, because in 6 months' time, there's going to be no inventory at all, and prices are just going to start skyrocketing. So I went out and bought actually short sales, and I bought as many short sales as I possibly could and rented them out, and market went up. And again, it was a long time ago, and percentage-wise, it probably went up 100% in 2 years. But I saw that and identified it. I screwed it up in Denver because my brother-in-law, not my GCW brother-in-law, my real brother-in-law, who actually has Simply Denver. He was obviously in Denver, and I could see the same things happening to the market there 6 months later than they did here. And I should have done the same thing in Denver, and I missed it, and I should have just bought everything I could there. But anyway, that was, great opportunity, and there's been lots of things like that. Now, I did sell too early, because I sold all my houses probably about 3 years ago, and then everything went up another 100% in the last 3 years. But look, at the end of the day, you got to take the money and move on sometimes. So that's it.
So what do you think is different about this market? Like how is this market affecting the luxury market differently than maybe the recession?
The luxury market is still just on fire. I mean, people are just spending whatever they need to spend. And I think it's a product of the people that have moved to town. And there is so much more wealth in Vegas now than there was 10 years ago, certainly 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I mean, the people that have moved here, obviously incredible. We all read the papers, etc. But there's so many more amazing people that have come to town and brought a lot of money with. I mean, you look at the prices in the last 2-3 years where houses have sold above 10 million, and there's been so many. If you look back just 3 years ago, there was nothing over 10 million, didn't exist. I remember 2 houses that I had in the Ridges, this is probably 5 years ago, and they were both at 6.5 million, 12,000 square feet, couldn't sell them. resold about 3 years ago, but they've all doubled since then. But that was where the max price point was 6.5 million. Look where we are now. And so that money's not going away. And those people aren't taking a haircut where if the market goes down, they're just not going to sell.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I don't think you'll see those prices again.
So do you think interest rates are even a bother to people in that market?
Well, look, interest rates are always going to be a bother, whichever way you look at it. I've got an interesting situation with a client at the moment where he's prepared to do financing on his house in McDonald Highlands. He'll finance for $5 million at 5% interest rate, interest only for 5 years. So no matter how rich you are, if you go and stick $5 million in the bank, they'll give you 5.5% on the money. So you could literally borrow the 5 million from him and make 0.5 point on the spread on $5 million bucks.
Right.
I'd do that if I wanted the house. I'd do it all day long. So again, even if you've got the cash to buy the house, why wouldn't you do that deal? And 5.5% is the minimum that you can make on it. You can probably find CD stuff like that'll pay you 6%. So, everybody's affected by it. The big money guys that bought when interest rates were 2.5%, they all got financing because it was good use of money.
Right.
I bought a house in California 3.5 years ago, and I got 2.65%, 30-year fixed,
Yeah.
2.65%. I'll never pay it off. Just really, really good use of money.
Right.
So yeah, it always affects people some ways.
In your crystal ball, what do you see in the next 6 months?
I don't have a crystal ball, so I couldn't tell you.
That's what we say all the time.
If I
We don't
did, it
have-
was broken.
Yeah. There's no crystal ball. There's no 8 ball. There's nothing. But
I see a 3-month baby boy driving me crazy.
Yeah.
That's what I see in the
Yes.
next 6 months.
you see delirium from being sleepless.
Actually, I was on Find a Nanny web pages right before we came on here. So yes, we're looking for nannies at the moment.
You took the words out of my
Yeah,
mouth.
exactly.
Whatever you have to
Exactly.
do to get the sleep that you need.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's different types of nannies. I'm learning all of this.
Yes.
But, yeah, we were just looking and doing. And it said, what sort of time frames are you looking for a nanny for? And I clicked every single day, 7 days a week, and starting at midnight and then going through to midnight. It's
You're like,
yeah.
I want a Vegas nanny.
Sure, absolutely. My guess is we'll have a few. Actually, my friend who I met on the lot in the Ridges, when I first met him, he had 3 nannies. I said, 3 nannies? It's a bit excessive. You've only got 2 kids. So it makes perfect sense. I said, well, how? And he said, well, imagine you're in this situation. You've only got 2 nannies. One of them's got the night off and the other one goes sick. Then what do you do? I said, oh, so that's why you have 3 nannies.
Yeah.
I think it's a little excessive because at some stage you've got to parent your own child. But yes, anyway, we are actively searching for nannies.
I like
All
that. I think I'm going to coin it the Vegas nanny. I think it's appropriate.
Sure.
24 hours. You don't want
Absolutely.
any nanny to close. No
Absolutely.
nanny services closing.
Absolutely.
So what are some trends? You mentioned your friend's house in the Summit, and I would say that's probably that area is where luxury is moving. Ascaya, some of those neighborhoods. What are you seeing in design trends, architectural trends? Obviously, we've gone very modern here compared to the Spanish and the Tuscan.
Well, it's going through the transition that it goes through every 5 years. So if you're building a house right now and you've gone for the white porcelain everything, which is the flippy favorite, right? Every single house I go in has exactly the same, they call it quartz, but it's really just porcelain countertop that looks like marble and the same quartz floor and all of that. That's going and almost gone. That sort of farmhouse chic modern look is definitely in with the wood floors, etc. As you guys probably know, I represent Peter Lick at Jewel Homes, and I think Pete's cutting edge on what he's doing, which is a warm industrial. We do that lovely Indonesian reclaimed teak floor, which looks amazing. I actually just put it in my office in Summerlin last week.
You did.
And I have it up in my house in California. I think it looks fantastic. And just that kind of feel to it. But yes, it's definitely transitioning. And the all whites that were here 5 years ago, I think will look very, very dated in the next year.
Interesting. Yeah, warmer, less gray, warmer colors.
Yeah, there's no greys anymore.
Yeah.
The new stuff is all browns. Actually saw a lovely house in Southern Highlands over the weekend. Good friend of mine Alicia Taylor, who sadly isn't with Simply, but she owns her own brokerage. So she and I have been friends for about 20 years, and she's representing the house. And yet everything brown in there, just brown, real wood floor, just got a nice feel to it, which again, we're trending right. Because if you looked 5 years ago, if you did anything brown, nobody would look at it because it had to be grey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you think that there will be ever an end to the mega mansion?
I have no idea. And again, that's really... So Pete's gone the opposite way because everything he builds at Jewel is about 5,000 square feet. And then if you look at European architecture, there's obviously the micro houses and all of that. And obviously Europe in general, much, much smaller homes. Flip side of that, I've got a client coming in from Florida, and I can't find him a house big enough because he's looking for 50,000 square feet and they don't exist here. So I don't know. The problem developers have is they only look at dollar per square foot. So the bigger the lot, the bigger the house they'll build because they want to just max it out because they think at the end of the day they'll just get more for it. Whereas I think that we've certainly proved the smaller homes get more money dollar per square foot. It's the economies of scale. That's basic economics. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. Maybe not in Vegas. You know, when you think about the people that like to come to Vegas that do like the big house, there's certainly more and more big houses coming.
Yeah.
And what's your prediction if you could just venture a guess? This town has spread far south, far north. We're basically in Jean in Inspirata. I think there are addresses there, right? Like it's basically you see like the old roller coaster in Prim. I mean, where are we going? Like where do you see Las Vegas in 10 years?
Well, obviously, my dream is that everybody goes to Pahrump because I own 40 acres of land in Pahrump that I have no idea what to do with.
Okay.
So if anybody wants to go out there and just give me $1 billion for 40 acres, everybody should move to Pahrump. Now, if you've been to Pahrump, that's the negative. You know, that's the downside is... Yeah. Anyway, it is what it is, and I've got some long stories about a terrible situation in Pahrump that had nothing to do with the hen house, but all to do with the city council in Pahrump and a man having a heart attack on top of me. That's a whole nother story for a different podcast. But no, look, I think the growth continues. Obviously, we've had a lot of fill-in. If you look at what Pete's done at Warm Springs and Decatur, what we call the urbanization of Las Vegas, where people and a lot of our clients have come from the high-rise living because they love living close to town, but they don't want to deal with valet parking and no grocery stores and everything else like that. Pete bought 100 lots at Warm Springs in Decatur. When we did the first house, I said, who on earth is going to live here? And he said, I don't care. It's your problem. That's why I've hired you to sell them for me. And we've sold them like crazy for crazy numbers. You know, we're getting $800 a foot for our houses there. And it's really just been a complete revitalization of the area. The area was never bad. There was no crime or anything else like that. It was just older. So, you know, there's big custom homes out there, but they're all 20, 30 years old. If you look what a lot of people are doing, Scotch 80s, Rancho Bel Air, and lots of the flippy remodels that are going on in there, people want to be closer to town. So if I had to really do a prediction as somebody who came from a very, very large city, you want to be able to get to things easily. We don't have a traffic problem here now. If we have traffic in 10 years' time, you're going to eliminate, you know, people don't want to be in suburbia anymore. They want to be close to things. All the great things that we brought to town, the stadiums, etc. We want to be close to that. So I think we'll see a lot more development in the center of town.
But you're investing in Pahrump.
No. I invested a long time ago. I have the 40 acres. I don't know what to do with it. I bought it in 2003 because I thought that's the way town was going, and it didn't happen, and I've been sitting on it since then. So maybe my son will figure it out when he's my age.
I love that.
Yeah.
Should we play a game?
Yeah. You up for a game?
Sure.
Okay.
As long as it has nothing to do with American football or any American sports. I don't know anything about American sports.
Nope.
Okay. The game is Kiss, Marry, Kill.
Okay.
So Kiss, Marry, Kill Strip Edition. You
not
have
stripper edition.
No,
I
not
hope.
stripper edition.
Okay.
Strip edition.
Yeah.
So we already know Tropicana was part of our game previously, but now we know the fate of the Tropicana.
Okay.
So that's you. Do you have fond memories of the Tropicana?
I love the Tropicana.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So Kiss, Marry, Kill, Excalibur, Luxor, Circus.
So to get, because again, this is an American game, not an English game. So to get this straight and clarify the rules, I have to decide which one I want to kiss, which one I want to marry, and which one I want to kill.
Yep,
and it was
correct.
Circus, Luxor, and
Excalibur.
Has a lot of really bad smelling smoke in those buildings. I guess you... Wow, that's a tough question. I guess you gotta kill the Excalibur.
Okay.
Because that's the ugliest casino in the world, right? It's just awful. So therefore, you have to marry the Luxor.
Okay.
And what's the other one I have to do?
Circus.
Circus.
You're gonna kiss Circus?
Yeah, sure. Why
Okay.
not?
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
I think
I like that.
Didn't John say that he was going to marry Circus?
Yeah, because that's where he met Gidget.
yeah, because his wife has good memories there.
Sure.
Right.
Listen, for those of you that haven't seen Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, you should see it. Circus. I mean, it's just amazing. And if you haven't been staggering around Vegas Strip off your head on drugs in the 1990s, then, it doesn't make any sense otherwise.
Yeah.
So, great movie.
I've seen it. Circus is the first buffet I went to, but I was young.
And look at us. We survived.
You've recovered?
Yeah.
Like from the food? Okay, good.
yeah, ptomaine
Last time I was in
poisoning.
Circus was with Vince Neil.
Okay.
Because Vince had a bar in there or something. And actually, I for a long time was affiliated with Habitat for Humanity.
Okay.
And we did an event, a breakfast at Vince's bar in Circus to raise money. And that was the last time I was in there with Vince. So,
Okay.
yeah.
It's a good organization. You're really involved in St. Jude's, right?
Primarily through my wife,
Okay.
though it's obviously us together, and we'd just done a lot of stuff. She was very involved with their events here, which was a month ago. It was a 3-day golf tournament, and then there was a tasting, and then there was an auction, and then there was a poker tournament, which I lasted far too long in. I'm a terrible poker player, had a very basic strategy, sit out forever, and then after about 45 minutes, push all my chips in, and it just confused the crap out of everybody, and I won every time.
Yeah, that's how you do it.
Until one guy at 1:30 in the morning had the same strategy as me, didn't know what his cards were, and so he called me, and I had total crap, and he had crap, and so I left.
Yeah.
That was that. So, yeah, lots of stuff with St. Jude's. Love them. Great organisation. Autism awareness. I've done a lot of stuff with. And again, great people over there. I started out, the first people I did stuff with Southern Nevada Children First, which again is an incredible organisation that provides things for teenage mums that have been through just terrible things. And they're dramatically underfunded, and I wish I could have done more for them. And Monique over there, I'm sure she's still over there, and just an incredible organisation. But yeah, been involved in a lot of things over the years.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. What are some of the favorite places you like to go to eat?
As long as
Go
it's
to
in the
do?
win, I'm going there.
Okay.
We go to one of my wife's pet peeves is when you go to the Strip, they always say, where are you visiting from? Because it's obviously primarily tourists, and there are very few locals that go down to the Strip. So she immediately snaps back, Summerlin. But yeah, no, we if I'm ever doing a meeting with people, it's always Terrace Point Cafe.
Okay.
And then if I've got a bit of spare time, I'll take my wife for lunch at Terrace Point Cafe. And then Delilah's is amazing in there. Absolutely love Delilah's. Delilah's is probably my favorite place to eat, but it's very difficult to get in there. And an old Vegas term is you got to have juice, right? If your juice sorts at everything, and my juice at the Win is getting tired of me because I've hit him up too many times and then cancelled on him. But one of the great things about being a dealer at Caesar's Palace 30 years ago is all the guys you work with are casino managers somewhere, and so if you really need something, they'll sort it out for you.
Yeah.
I really hope the next time you're asked that and your wife says Summerlin, you follow up with Perump.
Sure, never going to happen. So there we are.
Well, thank you so much for being on our
Oh, it's been a
podcast.
pleasure.
It's
I've
very
immensely
fun to
enjoyed
have
it.
you.
Thank you so much. For having me.
Will I offend you if I do my best British accent?
Absolutely.
I will offend you?
Absolutely.
Okay, then I won't do it. Thank you for being on.